Hi guys, welcome to my channel Lush Foliage. I hope you guys are fine and are safe at home. So guys, today we're going to be talking about Aglaonema, also known as Chinese Evergreen. So this plant is native to Asia, so it tends to belong to a tropical environment. Now, this is a very easy house plant that you can grow. Now, a lot of people, they say that I have a black thumb and I cannot grow plants. Now, guys, there is no such thing as black thumb. Maybe you can refer yourself as a less experienced gardener. So this plant is going to be an excellent choice if you are going to get this in your collection. Now, the reason behind this is because this is a very easy to grow plant, does not have much requirements. But yes, there are certain care requirements that you need to keep in mind while growing this plant, and that's exactly what we are going to talk in this video. Now, talking about the temperature, these plants do well in temperatures that are between 15 degrees Celsius to 30 degrees Celsius. So if you belong to a place wherein you have temperatures that fall below 10 degrees Celsius, then you do not want to keep this plant outside. Also, do not keep these plants too close to the air conditioning vents because this is going to harm the foliage leaves. Now, talking about the pots, if you're growing Aglaonema, the best kind of pot material is plastic. Now, not only for Aglaonemas, but for any kind of foliage plants, if you're going to use plastic pots, it's much better because these pots tend to retain slight moisture, which is good for the plants. Now, if you're using terracotta or unglazed clay pots, there is nothing wrong, there is no harm, but the only thing is that the soil will dry much faster compared to the plastic pot. Hence, you will have to frequently water a plant that is sitting in a terracotta or unglazed pot. But if you have plastic pots, then it is amazing to grow foliage plants because these pots, they tend to retain slight moisture, which is enough for the plant to grow healthy, and this will prevent you from watering the pot frequently. Apart from that, you can use a pot size around 5 to 6 inches of depth for Aglaonemas, and they will do quite well. Now, talking about watering, now guys, whenever you notice that 25 to 30% of the top layer of soil is dry, you can go ahead and water your plant. If you're not able to understand, then you can always do the finger test is by poking into the soil. If you feel that the soil is dry, then you can go ahead and water it. Now guys, ensure that you do not do overwatering because if you're going to overwater the plant, the roots are going to rot, and do not let the soil dry completely, otherwise the plant will get dehydrated. If you're going to overwater it, or if you're going to underwater it, there are problems, so you need to maintain a balance. Now, talking about the light conditions, Aglaonemas will do well in indirect bright light as well as they'll do well in medium to low light depending upon the varieties, but do not expose them to direct sunlight, otherwise it will burn their delicate leaves. Now, a lot of darker green varieties of Aglaonemas will do well in medium to low light, so they will be excellent indoors, especially wherein you do not receive a lot of light. But there are certain varieties of Aglaonemas that have variegated leaves or that have bright foliage like these. They will appreciate indirect bright light. Now, the indirect bright light will make the colors on the foliage more intense. Now, talking about the soil, I tend to use the same soil combination for all my foliage plants, including Aglaonemas, and the combination includes coco peat with perlite. Coco peat is going to help retain slight moisture in the soil, which is very good for Aglaonemas. Apart from that, perlite is going to help aerate the soil. I have organic nutrient garden soil, which is going to provide nutrients to the plant. Apart from that, the sand is going to help us make a well-draining soil and also aerate the soil. Now guys, I tend to use these three combinations of soil. Now it all depends upon you. You can amend it according to your climate and needs. So that's why I'm not giving you the exact ratio, because if you belong to a dry place, then you might want to amend the soil. You might want to increase the coco peat ratio. So it all depends upon which city or climate you belong to. According to that, you can amend your soil. But these are the three main components that I tend to use for all my foliage plants. Now, Aglaonemas are not terribly susceptible to pests or diseases, but at times they occasionally pick up common pests like scale bugs, mealybugs, or spider mites. Now, this can be treated easily with an insecticide, or you can prepare your own DIY organic spray that will take care of it. Another issue is because this plant tends to like slight moisture in the soil, and in case if you have added in too much of moisture, then there might be fungal problems, and in case if you have overwatered them, then there might be an issue of root rot. So if you happen to notice there is a root rot, then you'll have to immediately cut the affected part and then repot it. Now guys, talking about propagation, it's very easy to propagate Aglaonema. Now you can do it via stem cutting or you can do it with plant division. Now guys, if you're going to ask my opinion, I would always suggest to go with plant division, especially when you're doing a repotting. It's much easy to do plant division. All you need to do is just cut it off exactly where you see the roots, so that both, if you're doing two propagations or if you're dividing it into two, then you can see that both these plants have a good amount of roots. Now when you're doing a stem cutting, you basically have to propagate it or you have to wait for the roots to appear, but here this is much easier because both these cuttings already have a good amount of roots. It's already well established, so this makes propagation much successful compared to stem cutting. Now talking about humidity, this is one plant that will do well in average humidity as well. The humidity that we have indoors, that is more than enough for this plant to grow. But obviously if the humidity is high, the plant will perform much better. But nevertheless, if you do not have humidifier, if you do not have all these setups, these plants will do well in average humidity as well. Now, aglaonemas do not put out any significant signs of dormancy, but they tend to go a little slower on their growth rate during the winter or the cooler months, and during the spring and the summer months, that's when they tend to bloom and flower. In case your aglaonema plant becomes thin and leggy, then prune the stem back to where the stem started to bend. Usually you'll notice that some of the leaves will start to bend from the stem, so give it a cut. The plant will branch out all along the length of the remaining stem. Now talking about fertilizers, aglaonemas need very little plant food, so you can always use a liquid based fertilizer and always dilute it in a liter of water before giving it to your aglaonema plant. Always ensure that it is less than 1/4 and you can give the dose once a month. So last but not least, is this plant toxic? Yes, this plant is toxic to humans and animals. The sap of this plant can irritate the skin and it can be very dangerous if this plant is ingested. So ensure that this plant is kept away from small children and pets as well. So guys, I hope that this video was helpful to you. If it was, please consider subscribing to my channel. Until then, take care, stay safe and keep planting.